You've been trying for a while now. Maybe it's been hours, maybe days. There's something you're working on, something you're hoping will shift, and the mind keeps circling it, pressing against it, like fingers testing a bruise. You notice the effort. You feel it in the jaw, the shoulders, the way the breath shortens when you lean too far forward into what isn't here yet. And somewhere beneath that, there's a question you haven't quite named. How hard should I be trying? When does effort become force? When does surrender become giving up? Right effort is not what we expect it to be. The words themselves seem to contradict. Effort sounds like pushing, like discipline, like the voice that says, try harder. And yet the Buddha pasted directly in the center of the path, not as a command to strive, but as an invitation to notice what we're already doing with our energy. Right effort asks us to look at the quality of our trying. Not whether we're trying enough, but how we're relating to the trying itself. Think of a river moving through a landscape. It doesn't force its way through stone. It finds the path of least resistance, and over time, the stone yields. But the river is not passive. It is continuous. It doesn't stop moving because the stone is hard. It doesn't rush forward in frustration when the way is unclear. There's a kind of intelligence in the movement, a responsiveness. The river meets what is there and keeps flowing. You can feel this in the body right now. Notice where you're holding, not to fix it, just to feel it. The tightness in the chest, the clenching in the hands, the way the belly pulls in when the mind is working too hard. This is effort that has forgotten itself. It has become tension. And tension believes it is necessary. It believes that if you let go, everything will collapse. But there's another kind of effort. It's quieter. It doesn't announce itself. You felt it before, maybe when you were learning something new and suddenly the trying fell away and the thing just happened. Your hands knew what to do. Your body found the rhythm. That's not the absence of effort. It's effort that has aligned with the natural movement of things. Effort that isn't fighting the river. The Buddha spoke of 4 kinds of right effort, and they're simpler than they sound. Prevent unwholesome states from arising. Abandon unwholesome states that have arisen. Cultivate wholesome states that haven't arisen yet. Maintain wholesome states that are already here. But even these instructions can become a new kind of striving if we're not careful. They can become a list, a program, another thing the mind uses to measure whether it's doing enough. What if right effort is more like tending a garden? You don't force the seeds to grow. You can't. But you also don't just scatter them on concrete and hope. You prepare the soil. You water when it's dry. You pull the weeds that choke the young plants. And then you wait. You trust the process that's already unfolding. The effort is in the tending, not in the outcome. Right now, your breath is moving. You don't have to make it happen. It's already happening. But you can bring attention to it. That's effort, gentle effort. The kind that doesn't add pressure, but simply meets what's already here. Breathe in and feel the coolness at the nostrils. Breathe out and feel the warmth. There's no need to deepen it or control it. Just feel it. The mind will wander. It always does. And when you notice it has wandered, there's a moment of choice. You can drag it back with frustration, scolding yourself for losing focus. Or you can guide it back softly, the way you might redirect a child who's wandered off the path. No drama, no shame, just a quiet return. This is the balance. Not striving so hard that you create more suffering. Not surrendering so completely that you lose connection with intention. The river again. It doesn't fight the stone, but it doesn't stop moving either. You're already in the middle of this. Right now, as you listen, there's effort happening. The effort to stay present. The effort to understand. And beneath that, maybe the effort to fix something, to become someone different, to finally get it right. Can you feel that? Not to judge it, but just to notice. What does effort feel like in your body when it's too tight? What does it feel like when it softens. The practice begins here, in this noticing. There is a kind of exhaustion that comes not from doing too much, but from doing with too much force. You may have felt it in your shoulders at the end of a long day, or in the tightness behind your eyes when you've been concentrating for hours without pause. The body knows the difference between effort and strain, even when the mind insists they are the same thing. A river flows without forcing its way through stone. It moves around what resists it. It finds the path that opens, and yet it never stops moving. This is not passivity. The river is not collapsed or inert. It simply does not mistake force for progress. When the Buddha spoke of right effort, he used the image of a lute string. Too tight, and it snaps. Too loose, and it produces no sound at all. The instruction is not to stop tuning. It is to learn what tension actually serves the music. You may notice this tension in small moments. The way you grip a pen when writing. The way you hold your breath when trying to concentrate. The way you push through fatigue as if rest were a kind of failure. These are not moral failings. They are simply habits of tightening that the body has learned, often for good reasons. At some point, pushing harder was the only way forward. But the body does not always know when that time has passed. And then there is the opposite movement, the collapse. The moment when effort feels impossible and you let everything go slack. Not the letting go of wisdom, but the letting go of defeat. The difference is subtle but unmistakable in the body. One feels like release. The other feels like sinking. A river does not collapse when it meets an obstacle. It does not stop moving. It adjusts. It finds another way. And it does this without drama, without the story of struggle. The water does not think about whether it is trying hard enough. It simply continues. Right effort is not about finding the perfect balance once and holding it forever. It is about learning to feel the difference, moment by moment, between the tightness that serves nothing and the ease that is still alive. This is not a concept to understand. It is a sensitivity to develop. You might begin by noticing one moment today when you are either pushing too hard or collapsing into passivity. Not to fix it. Not to correct yourself, just to feel it. Where does the pushing live in your body? Is it in your jaw, your chest, your hands? And where does the collapse live? Is it in your posture, your breath, your gaze? The lute string metaphor is useful because it points to something you can feel. A string that is too tight has a bitterness to it. Touch it and you sense it might break. A string that is too loose has no life in it. It sags. Neither one makes music. But the string that is tuned well has a kind of aliveness. It vibrates when touched. It responds. Your own effort can have this quality. Not the effort of grinding through. Not the passivity of giving up. But the effort that responds. The effort that adjusts. The effort that knows when to press and when to yield, not through thinking, but through feeling. This is why the practice is so simple. Just notice, because noticing is not neutral. When you bring awareness to the quality of your effort, something begins to shift on its own. The body starts to release what it does not need. The mind stops insisting on one strategy. You begin to sense the difference between a river that flows and a river that has gone dry or flooded its banks. There is no ideal state to reach. The string will need tuning again tomorrow. The river will meet new obstacles. But the capacity to feel the difference, to sense when you are too tight or too loose, this capacity grows steadier with attention. Not because you are improving, but because you are learning to listen. And listening is not passive. It is one of the most active things you can do. It requires you to be present, to be sensitive, to be willing to adjust without knowing in advance what the adjustment will be. A river listens to the landscape. It does not decide its path before it begins. It finds the path by moving, by touching what is there, by responding to what it meets. Your effort can be like this, not planned in advance, not held rigid, but alive, responsive, tuned to this moment and then the next. There is a way we hold effort that feels like righteousness. We believe that if we are not pushing, we must be failing. That if the mind wanders and we do not immediately wrench it back, we have lost something. This is not the effort the Buddha spoke of. This is something else, something that mistakes tension for commitment. A gardener who waters the soil but does not pull the seedling upward knows something about growth that we often forget. The gardener tends, she removes weeds, she adjusts the light, but she does not stand over the young plant and demand that it become a tree by evening. She does not grip the stem and pull. The plant grows because conditions support it, not because force is applied to its unfolding. Right effort is not the clenching of will. It is the willingness to begin again, not the refusal to rest. This is difficult to trust because we have been taught that rest is laziness, that softness is weakness, that if we are not controlling the outcome, we are not really trying. But the Buddha did not teach control. He taught clear seeing. He taught the kind of attention that notices when we are adding suffering to an already difficult moment. When you sit to practice and the mind scatters, there is a moment just after you notice. In that moment, you have a choice. You can pull the mind back with force, as if it were a disobedient animal. Or you can invite it back, the way you might turn your face toward the sun. Both are effort, but only one is kind. The strain shows up in the body first. The jaw tightens. The shoulders rise. The breath becomes shallow, held. These are signs that effort has crossed into grasping. When you notice strain in your practice, soften your grip and see if the intention remains. This is not about abandoning the practice. It is about discovering what effort actually is when it is not mixed with fear. Sometimes the mind wanders because it is tired. Sometimes it wanders because it is avoiding something. Sometimes it wanders because that is simply what minds do. The gardener does not stand over the soil and ask why the rain has not come. She notices the dryness. She brings water. She does not make the dryness mean something about her worth. Right effort is steady without being rigid. It returns without punishing. It notices the wandering and does not add a story about failure. This is harder than it sounds because we are used to using shame as fuel. We think that if we are not disappointed in ourselves, we will stop trying. But shame is not effort. Shame is a contraction. It makes the mind smaller, not clearer. There is a texture to real effort that is different from strain. It is alive but not frantic. It is engaged but not desperate. You can feel it in your body when you soften the grip and the intention remains. The breath does not need to be controlled to continue. The posture does not need to be forced to stay upright. The mind does not need to be punished to return. The gardener waters the soil each day, even when nothing visible is happening. She does not pull the seedling upward to check its progress. She trusts the process enough to let it unfold. This is not passivity. This is patience that has learned the difference between tending and forcing. When you return to the breath after the mind has wandered, notice how you return. Is there harshness in it? Is there a sense that you should not have wandered in the first place? Or can you return the way you might notice a friend across the room and walk toward them? Simple, direct, without drama. The distinction between intention and force becomes clear when you stop adding the second arrow. The mind wanders. That is the first arrow, the thing that happens. The self-criticism, the tightening, the sense that you are doing it wrong. That is the second arrow, the one you add. Right effort is the willingness to put down the second arrow. Not once, but each time you notice, you have picked it up again. This does not mean the practice becomes easy. It means the difficulty is no longer compounded by the story. That difficulty means failure. The gardener's work is still work. She still kneels in the dirt. Her back still aches. But she is not at war with the soil. She is not demanding that the plant prove something about her skill. When you soften your grip and the intention remains, you begin to see that effort is not about force. It is about direction. It is about returning. It is about the quiet decision to begin again, without making the wandering mean you are lost. There is a kind of tiredness that comes not from doing too much, but from holding too tightly. You know this tiredness. It lives in the jaw, the shoulders, the back of the mind, where you are always watching, always adjusting, always making sure nothing slips. We have learned to call this vigilance responsibility. We have learned to call it care. And in some way it is. But somewhere along the way the care became a fist, and the fist forgot it was a hand. Right effort is not about trying harder. It is not about finally getting the grip correct. It is about noticing what you are carrying and asking whether it needs to be carried this way or at all. A leaf falls from the tree without deciding when or how. It does not plan its descent or rehearse the landing. It does not hold on until it has mapped every gust of wind. It simply releases, and the releasing is not collapse. It is participation. The leaf meets the air, and the air meets the leaf, and the falling is not failure. We think letting go means giving up. We think if we stop controlling, everything will scatter. The project will fail. The relationship will drift. The mind will spiral. And so we hold on, teeth clenched around the map, unable to see where we are actually walking. But to let go is not to abandon the path. It is to stop carrying the map in your teeth. It is to trust that your hands are free, that your eyes can see, that the path is under your feet and not only in your head. This is not passivity. Letting go is an action. It is a choice you make again and again in the smallest moments. It is the breath you allow to finish without managing it, the silence you let sit without filling it, the thought you notice and do not chase. Right effort asks you to discern between the effort that opens and the effort that clenches. One moves with the grain of things, the other moves against it, carving deeper and deeper grooves of resistance. Think of something small you have been gripping, not the largest thing, not the thing that feels too important to release. Just one small thing. Maybe it is the way a conversation should have gone. Maybe it is the need to know what happens next. Maybe it is the idea that you should feel different than you do right now. For 5 minutes, practice releasing it. Not forever, not as a grand gesture. Just for 5 minutes, let it rest. You do not have to solve it or understand it or make peace with it. You only have to stop holding it so tightly. Notice what happens in the body when you do this. Notice if the breath deepens. Notice if the shoulders drop half an inch. Notice if there is a small flicker of space where before there was only pressure. The leaf does not fall once. It falls continuously, moment by moment, meeting each shift in the air without bracing. This is what surrender looks like in practice. Not a single decision, but a series of small releasings, each one just barely ahead of the clinging that wants to return. You may find that the thing you released comes back. This is not failure. The mind returns to what it knows. But now you have felt the difference. You have tasted the space that opens when the fist becomes a hand again. And that taste is enough. It is the beginning of discernment. Right effort is not about perfecting the release. It is about recognizing that you have a choice. That surrender is not something that happens to you when you are too weak to hold on. It is something you do deliberately, because you see that the holding itself has become the suffering. The tree does not push the leaf away. The leaf does not fail the tree by falling. There is a season for holding and a season for releasing, and the wisdom is in knowing which season you are in. When you recognize that surrender is an active choice, not a collapse, something shifts. The effort becomes lighter. Not because you are trying less, but because you are trying in alignment with what is actually happening. You are no longer fighting the fall. You are falling, awake, with your hands open. There is a gate at the edge of your attention. It stands between what enters and what takes hold. Most of us do not know we can tend this gate. We think awareness means letting everything pass through, or we think protection means building walls and preparing for battle. Both miss the point. The Buddha spoke of guarding the sense doors the way you would guard a flame in the wind. Not with fear, not with force, with care. A flame does not need to be shielded from every breeze, only from the gusts that would snuff it out. You do not chase the wind, you simply place your hand where it is needed. This is right effort. Not the effort of pushing harder or doing more. Not the effort of self-improvement or spiritual ambition. It is the effort of attention placed at the right threshold before harm becomes habit. We let so much in without noticing. A sharp comment from a colleague enters through the ear, and within seconds it has become a story about being undervalued. A craving for sweetness enters through the tongue, and before the taste fades, we are planning the next bite. Irritation enters through the skin when the room is too warm, and suddenly the whole evening feels wrong. These are not grand moments, they are quiet. They happen in the gap between contact and reaction. And most of the time, we are not there. We mistake vigilance for aggression. We think that to protect our peace, we must push away what we do not like. We think guarding the gate means standing there with a sword, ready to cut down every unwelcome visitor. But a gatekeeper who fights every shadow exhausts himself before nightfall. He cannot tell the difference between a threat and a leaf blown by the wind. He is so busy defending that he forgets what he is protecting. Aversion feels like strength. It feels like taking a stand. When irritation rises, we think we are being clear, setting boundaries, refusing to be passive. But aversion is not clarity. It is a tightening. It is the mind saying, "This should not be here," and then spending all its energy trying to make the world comply. The gate becomes a battlefield, and the gatekeeper, exhausted, eventually stops watching altogether. Right effort is not about stopping aversion from arising. It will arise. The mind has been conditioned to push away discomfort for as long as you have been alive. Right effort is about meeting aversion at the gate, before it takes the shape of action or speech, before it hardens into resentment, before it becomes the story you tell yourself about why this moment is wrong. When a familiar craving or irritation arises, pause. Do not act. Do not follow it into the next thought. Just name it. Say to yourself quietly, "This is irritation," or "This is wanting," not as judgment, not as a way to make it go away, just as recognition. The way you might notice rain starting to fall. You are not stopping the rain, you are simply aware that it is raining. This naming is the hand placed gently around the flame. It does not smother, it does not fight, it steadies. And in that steadiness, something shifts. The irritation is still there, but it is no longer running the gate. You are. The gatekeeper does not chase every shadow because he knows the difference between watching and reacting. He sees movement at the edge of the courtyard, and he does not rush toward it. He waits, he observes. Most shadows pass on their own. Only a few require his attention. And when they do, he moves calmly, without drama, because he has not spent his energy on phantoms. This is what it means to guard the sense doors. You do not close them. You do not harden against the world. You simply stay present at the threshold. You notice what arrives. You see craving as craving, aversion as aversion. And in that seeing, you have already created space. The pattern does not take hold automatically. It has to pass through your attention first. And attention, when it is clear, is surprisingly strong. It is not violent. It does not need to be. Protection does not require force when you are actually present. The flame stays lit not because you fought the wind, but because you knew where to place your hand. The gate stays guarded not because you turned away every visitor, but because you learned to recognize which ones carry harm and which ones are just passing through. We spend so much time learning what to avoid, what not to think, what not to feel, what not to become, and there is some wisdom in that. We do learn to see what causes harm, what tightens the heart, what leads us into smaller and smaller rooms. But somewhere in all that careful watching, we forget the other half. We forget that something also needs to grow. Right effort is often taught as a kind of vigilance. Guard the mind, push away unwholesome states, keep watch at the gates. And yes, there is protection in that, but if that is all we do, we become gardeners who only pull weeds. The soil stays bare, nothing blooms. We are left with clean ground and no life. The teaching says that wholesome states grow not by force, but by the warmth of attention, not by command, not by discipline alone, by warmth. This is not the language we are used to. We are used to effort that grips, effort that pushes, effort that says, I will make this happen. But the kind of effort being pointed to here is different. It does not demand, it does not clench, it offers conditions, it makes space. Sunlight does not demand the flower open. It does not pull at the petals or shame the bud for being closed. It simply arrives, it offers itself. And in that offering, something becomes possible. The flower does not open because it is told to. It opens because the conditions allow it. Because warmth is present, because there is no force, only invitation. This is what we forget when we focus only on stopping the bad. We think effort means control. We think it means willpower applied like a hammer. And so we try to force kindness. We try to manufacture patience. We try to will ourselves into compassion. And it does not work. Or it works for a moment and then it collapses because we are trying to grow something in frozen ground. What if effort could also mean noticing? What if it could mean turning toward what is already alive in us, even if it is small, even if it is quiet, and letting it be felt, not making it bigger, not inflating it into something impressive, just letting it exist. Just giving it a moment of warmth. There is a moment in your day when you feel something shift. Maybe someone thanks you and you actually hear it. Maybe you let someone go ahead of you in line and there is a softness in your chest. Maybe you see something beautiful and you pause. These moments are easy to miss. They do not announce themselves. They do not demand attention. They come and go like breath. But they are wholesome states. They are the beginnings of clarity, of kindness, of ease, and they need warmth. The practice here is simple. Notice one moment of kindness or clarity today and let yourself feel it fully. Not analyze it, not judge whether it is enough. Not compare it to some ideal version of compassion. Just feel it. Let it land in your body. Let it be real for 3 seconds, 5 seconds, however long it lasts. This is not about congratulating yourself. It is not about building self-esteem or checking a box. It is about learning what sunlight feels like. It is about recognizing that wholesome states are not manufactured. They are revealed. They are already present in small ways, and they grow when they are met with attention that does not grip. You might notice the warmth in your hands when you hold a cup of tea. You might notice the quiet satisfaction of finishing a task without rushing. You might notice the moment you choose not to say the sharp thing, and there is space instead of tightness. These are not grand gestures. They are not enlightenment, but they are real, and they are the ground from which something larger can grow. Sunlight does not force the flower, but it also does not ignore it. It does not turn away and say, "You will open when you are ready." It stays. It offers itself again and again. This is the balance, not passive waiting, not aggressive pushing, just steady presence, just warmth that does not demand, but does not abandon. When you notice that moment of kindness or clarity, you are offering sunlight. You are saying to that small, wholesome state, "I see you, you matter, you are welcome here." And in that seeing, something shifts, not always visibly, not always immediately. But the conditions change, the ground warms. What was tight begins to loosen. This is right effort. Not the effort that only says no, not the effort that only guards and protects, but the effort that also says yes, that also nourishes, that also makes room for what is good to grow, not by force, but by the quiet power of encouragement over command. You sit down to meditate, and immediately the mind begins to organize the moment. It decides how long you should sit, how still you should be, how calm you ought to feel. The body might be tired, but the mind overrides this. It has a plan. It has read about right effort and believes effort means pushing through. But the breath does not consult the mind before it moves. It does not ask permission to slow down or speed up. It does not apologize when it becomes shallow or celebrate when it deepens. The breath neither strives nor surrenders. It simply continues. This is not laziness. This is not giving up. The breath responds to what is present. When you climb stairs, it quickens. When you lie down, it softens. It does not fight these changes. It does not cling to a preferred rhythm. Waves rise and fall without consulting the shore. They do not ask if the shore is ready. They do not worry whether they are rising correctly. We have learned to distrust this natural intelligence. We believe that if we do not control the breath, the posture, the quality of attention, then nothing will happen. We believe that practice requires constant supervision. And so we sit, but we do not rest. We watch the breath, but we are also managing it, correcting it, evaluating whether we are doing enough. There is a pace in the body that knows when to rest and when to move. You have felt this. After a long day, the body sinks into a chair without asking. After sitting too long, it shifts without announcing the decision. This is not the mind deciding. This is the body's own rhythm asserting itself. But when we sit to meditate, we often override this. We hold the body in a shape it has outgrown. We keep the attention fixed when it has already exhausted a particular object. We believe that discipline means ignoring the signals. Right effort is not the effort to maintain a single state. It is the effort to notice what is actually needed. Sometimes the mind is scattered and needs an anchor. Sometimes the body is restless and needs permission to settle. Sometimes the breath is shallow because you are afraid, and the effort required is not to deepen it, but to let it be shallow without panic. Sit now, if you are able, or simply notice the breath where you are. Do not try to change it. Do not try to keep it the same. Just notice where effort appears. Is there effort in the shoulders? In the jaw? In the thought that you should be calmer by now? Waves rise and fall without consulting the shore, and the shore does not brace itself against each wave. It receives what comes. It releases what goes. The mind will want to turn this into a new rule. It will say, "I should not try at all." But this is still the mind organizing the moment. Not trying is not the same as resting in what is already moving. The breath is already breathing. The heart is already beating. Digestion continues without supervision. There is a vast intelligence in the body that does not wait for permission. Right effort is the effort to stop interfering, not all at once, not as a new demand, but slowly by noticing where you are adding effort that is not needed. You do not need to hold the breath in place. You do not need to keep the mind from wandering. Wandering is part of the rhythm. Returning is part of the rhythm. Both are the breath's own intelligence expressing itself. When you notice effort, do not try to remove it, just see it. Feel where it lives in the body. Is it in the eyes, in the chest? In the thought that this moment is not enough? The wave does not try to be taller, it does not try to last longer. It rises because conditions support rising. It falls because conditions support falling. You are not separate from this. Your breath is not separate from the rhythm that moves all breath. When you sit and do nothing but notice, you begin to feel the difference between effort that serves and effort that controls. Effort that serves is light. It appears when the mind drifts too far and gently suggests return. It notices when the body is in pain and allows a shift. Effort that controls is heavy. It grips the moment. It demands a particular outcome. It treats the present as raw material for a future state. The breath continues whether you manage it or not. This is not a failure of discipline. This is the body's wisdom. Let the breath breathe. Let the body find its own stillness. Let the mind wander and return without congratulation or blame. Waves rise and fall without consulting the shore, and you are not the shore. You are the water, moving as water moves. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes from trying very hard to be good at letting go. You sit down to meditate and immediately begin monitoring yourself. Am I relaxed enough? Is my mind too busy? Am I doing this right? The effort to be effortless becomes its own kind of labor, and the path you hoped would bring ease starts to feel like one more thing you are failing at. This is the strange bind of spiritual striving. You have heard that peace comes from releasing attachment, so you reach for peace with both hands. You have learned that enlightenment is not something to chase, so you chase the state of not chasing. And all the while, something in you tightens. Try to hold water in your fist. Close your fingers around it and watch what happens. The harder you squeeze, the faster it drains away. What you wanted most slips through the very grip meant to keep it. This is not because you are doing it wrong. This is the nature of grasping itself. The same thing happens with practice. You set an intention to be present, and then you spend the whole sit evaluating how present you are. You read about non-attachment and immediately want to become someone who does not attach. The goal becomes another object of craving, and craving is precisely what you hope to see through. This is not failure. This is just what minds do. They take even the most liberating teaching and turn it into a project. They hear about the freedom of letting go and immediately start building a plan to achieve it. But right effort, as the Buddha described it, is not about force. It is not about grinding yourself into a shape you think you should be. It has a quality of care, not conquest. It notices what is happening and makes space for something wholesome to unfold, without demanding that it unfold on your schedule or in your preferred form. There is an old Zen instruction that sounds almost reckless at first. Seek nothing, it says, not even enlightenment. And if you stop seeking, the way opens by itself. This does not mean you abandon practice. It means you stop treating practice like a transaction. You stop sitting down with a hidden agenda, waiting for the moment when you finally get what you came for. You stop measuring each session against some imagined ideal. When you notice yourself grasping at a state, at progress, at proof that this is working, you can ask a very simple question. What would happen if I softened here? Not gave up, not stopped caring, just softened the grip. You might find that the tightness in your chest eases a little. You might notice that the breath moves more freely when you are not trying to control it. You might see that awareness is already here, and it does not need your effortful supervision to function. This is not about becoming passive. It is about recognizing that some things cannot be forced into being. You cannot make yourself calm by clenching your jaw and demanding calm. You cannot manufacture insight by sheer determination. The fist closes around water and loses what it tries to hold. But when you open your hand, the water can rest there. It does not stay forever. It will eventually evaporate or spill. But while it is there fully, without the violence of your grip distorting it. The same is true of this moment. When you stop trying to make it into something else, it can be what it is. Your mind will still wander. Restlessness will still arise. But you are not at war with any of it. You are simply seeing it, letting it move, noticing when you have picked up the rope of craving again and deciding whether you want to keep pulling. Spiritual ambition is one of the subtlest chains. It disguises itself as devotion. It feels noble. It tells you that wanting liberation is different from other kinds of wanting, that this desire is pure. But craving wrapped in holy language is still craving. It still leans forward, away from here, toward some future moment when you will finally be enough. Right effort asked you to see this, not to judge it, not to be ashamed of it, just to see it clearly. And in the seeing, something shifts. The grip loosens. The breath finds its own rhythm. The path stops being a prison and becomes just this, one step, and then the ground beneath your foot. The mind wanders. It always has. This is not something you are doing wrong. A shepherd stands in a field at dusk. One sheep moves toward the fence line. Then another drifts toward the road. The shepherd does not scold them, does not question whether he is a good shepherd. He simply calls. His voice is steady. The sheep turn and walk back. You sit down to be present. Within seconds, the mind is gone. A memory surfaces. A plan forms. A judgment arrives about how badly this is going. And then comes the second wandering, the one that hurts more, the thought that you should be better at this by now. The Buddha said, the mind wanders 1,000 times, and 1,000 times, gently, we bring it home. He did not say the mind should stop wandering. He did not say the 1,000th time would be easier than the first. He said, we bring it home, again and again. And the word he used was gentle. Most of us have learned the opposite. We have learned that wandering is failure, that each return is evidence of weakness. We sit down with the best intention, and when the mind drifts, we tighten. We add a layer of shame. We tell ourselves this shouldn't be happening. And so the practice becomes a place where we punish ourselves 1,000 times a day. But the wandering is not the problem. The punishment is. Right effort does not mean constant vigilance. It does not mean gripping the mind so it cannot move. It means noticing when the mind has wandered and calling it back the way a shepherd calls a sheep. No anger, no story about what the wandering means, just the call. The sheep does not think it has failed. It hears the voice and turns. That is all. When you notice your mind has wandered, you are already awake. The noticing itself is presence. It is not something that happens after you fail. It is the moment awareness returns. And what happens next matters more than anything else in the practice. You can return with force, with frustration, with a thought that sounds like, not again, or you can return the way the shepherd calls, with one soft breath. No commentary, no judgment about how far you drifted or how long you were gone. Just the breath, just the return. This is where effort and surrender meet. Effort is the willingness to return. Surrender is letting go of the story about why you left. You do not need to understand why the mind wandered. You do not need to prevent the next wandering. You only need to come back. Now, with kindness. Equanimity is not indifference. It is not pretending the mind did not wander. It is meeting the wandering without adding weight to it. The mind drifted. That is what minds do. Now it returns. That is what practice does. Neither moment is more important than the other. The shepherd does not love the sheep more when they stay close. He does not love them less when they wander. He simply calls them back because that is his role. Your role is the same. not to keep the mind from wandering, not to become someone whose mind never drifts, just to call it back, 1,000 times if needed, 10,000 times. Each time your mind wanders today, return with one soft breath instead of criticism, not as a technique to make the mind behave, not as a way to finally get this right, but as an act of kindness toward the only mind you will ever have. When you breathe in, you are already home. When you breathe out, the wandering dissolves. There is no gap between the return and the arrival. The breath is both. You do not need to wait until you are good at this. You do not need to earn the right to return gently. The gentleness is not a reward for progress. It is the practice itself. It is what makes the return possible 1,000 times. Because harshness can only call the mind back once or twice before the mind stops listening, but gentleness can call forever. The shepherd's voice does not weaken with repetition. It does not grow frustrated on the 100th call. If anything, it softens. Because he knows the sheep by now, he knows they will wander, and he knows they will return. That is simply how it is. When the return feels like kindness instead of correction, you are not fixing yourself. You are meeting yourself. And the mind begins to trust that it is safe to come back. Not because it will finally stay, but because the coming back itself has become home. There is a kind of tiredness that comes not from working too hard, but from fighting the work itself. You feel it in the shoulders, in the jaw, in the way the breath shortens, even when the task is small. It is the exhaustion of effort that does not trust itself. We have been taught that spiritual practice requires discipline, and it does. But somewhere along the way, discipline became tension. Striving became a clenched fist. We began to believe that if we could just push hard enough, long enough, we would finally arrive at a place where pushing is no longer necessary. We would reach the summit and rest. But the summit keeps moving, and the rest never comes. A bird climbs into the wind with powerful strokes. Each beat of the wings is work. The body knows this. The muscles know this. But once the bird reaches a certain height, something shifts. The effort does not disappear. It changes. The wings open wide and the bird glides, carried by the very wind it was working against. The effort and the ease are not separate moments. They are woven into a single motion. Right effort is not about doing more or doing less. It is about noticing when effort has turned against itself, when the trying becomes a kind of violence, when you are meditating and also fighting the fact that you are distracted, when you are practicing patience and also angry that you are not yet patient. The effort splits in two. One part moves forward, the other part resists the movement, and you are caught between them, exhausted. The teaching says that effortless action arises when effort is no longer at war with itself. This does not mean you stop trying. It means you stop trying to not be trying. You stop resisting the fact that practice takes practice. You stop waiting for the day when you will no longer need to show up. There is a moment in every long walk when the body stops complaining. The legs find their rhythm. The breath settles. You are still walking, still moving, but the struggle has dissolved. The effort is still there, but it is no longer effortful. It has become part of the landscape. You do not think about it anymore. You are simply walking. This is what right effort feels like. Not the absence of work, but the absence of war. You can feel this in small things, washing dishes, folding laundry, sitting down to write. At first, there is resistance. The body does not want to begin. The mind lists all the reasons to wait. But if you start anyway, without demanding that the resistance disappear, something softens. The hands move, the water runs, the task unfolds. You are doing it, and not doing it at the same time. The bird is gliding, but the wings are still open, still responsive to the wind. The paradox is this: effort is needed and effort is the problem. Both are true. The mistake is thinking you must choose between them, that you must either push harder or give up entirely. But right effort is not a choice between striving and surrendering. It is the discovery that they are not opposites. When you notice one activity today where effort and ease are not separate, you are not looking for perfection. You are not trying to force relaxation into a tense moment. You are simply watching. Maybe it is the way you lift a cup of tea. Maybe it is the way you stand up from a chair. Maybe it is the way you listen to someone speak without planning your reply. There is effort in all of these, and there is ease. They live together. The mind wants to solve this. It wants a method, a technique, a way to make all effort feel effortless. But that is still the mind at war with itself, still trying to escape the present moment by perfecting it. The bird does not think about gliding. It does not congratulate itself for finding the right current. It simply flies. The work and the rest are one motion. The effort and the ease are one breath. You do not need to fix your effort. You do not need to become someone who no longer struggles. You only need to notice when the struggle is with yourself, when you are pushing and also pushing against the pushing, when the effort has split and you are standing in the gap, exhausted. Right effort is the willingness to let that gap close, to let the trying be just trying, to let the work be just work. Not a problem to solve, not a stage to transcend, just this, just now. The wings open, the wind howls, and you are already flying. You sit down to practice and immediately the question arrives, am I trying too hard or not hard enough? The mind wants an answer it can keep, a setting it can lock in place. But the breath moves, the body shifts, and the question itself changes shape before you can solve it. A tightrope walker crossing a wire high above the ground does not find a single position and freeze there. The body sways. The wire moves. Balance is not a destination, but a conversation between falling and catching, so subtle that from below it looks like stillness. Right effort works the same way. Not a place you arrive at once. Not a formula you memorize and apply. A returning, a noticing, a small adjustment made in response to what is actually happening now. We keep searching for the perfect balance instead of meeting this moment as it is. We think if we could just find the right amount of effort, we could rest there. But the moment we try to hold any state in place, it has already changed. The breath that was shallow is now deep. The mind that was scattered is now dull. The effort that steadied you a moment ago now grips too tight. This is not failure. This is impermanence, doing what it always does. The middle way is not a place you find once, but a returning you practice always. The Buddha did not teach a static point between two extremes. He taught a living response to conditions as they shift. When energy is low, you meet that. When the mind is racing, you meet that. The adjustment is specific to now, not to 10 breaths ago or 10 breaths ahead. Sit quietly for a moment and notice the small adjustments your body makes to stay upright without your command. You are not holding yourself in place with force. The spine lengthens, then softens. The shoulders rise slightly, then release. The head tilts forward a fraction, then returns. All of this happens beneath the level of decision. The body already knows how to balance. It does not ask whether it is trying too hard. It simply responds to the information it receives. Pressure here, release there, a small shift to the left. The tightrope walker does not think about balance. She feels the wire, feels her weight, and moves. Right effort is the same. You feel the quality of attention in this moment. If it is tight, you soften. If it is slack, you gather. Not because you have figured out the right answer, but because you are listening to what is here. The problem is not that we lose balance. The problem is that we think losing balance means we have done something wrong. So we try to grip harder, or we give up entirely. Both are ways of refusing the conversation. Both are attempts to make impermanence stop. But the wire keeps moving. The breath keeps changing. The mind keeps shifting between clarity and fog, energy and fatigue, interest and boredom. This is not a problem to solve. This is the condition in which practice happens. When you sit, you might notice the urge to control the breath, to make it deeper or slower or more even. This is effort that has tipped into grasping. You can feel it in the body, a tightness in the chest, a holding in the throat. The tightrope walker who grips the balancing pole too hard begins to shake. The tension itself creates instability, so you soften. Not by abandoning attention, but by letting the breath move as it moves. You are still here. You are still noticing. But you are not forcing. Then the mind wanders and you do not notice for a long time. When you finally return, there is a temptation to scold yourself, to bear down with more determination. But this too is a kind of gripping. The walker who overcorrects one way will overcorrect the other. Instead, you simply return. You place attention back on the breath, the way you would place a hand gently on a table. No drama, no story about how far you fell or how long you were gone. Just the return itself. This is the practice. Not the achieving of balance, but the returning to balance, again and again, each time a little different, because the conditions are a little different. The middle way is not a compromise between two fixed points. It is a responsiveness, a willingness to feel what is happening and adjust without clinging to any particular adjustment. The body does this naturally when you sit. The breath does this naturally when you stop controlling it. Attention can do this too, if you let it. You do not need to find the answer. You need to feel the wire. We have been walking together through this question of effort, through the territory where trying meets letting go. And now, as we approach the end of these words, there is nothing left to solve. The balance we have been exploring is not something you achieve once and hold forever. It moves, it breathes, it changes with each moment, each mood, each season of your life. Right effort is not a destination. It is the quality of attention you bring to this very breath. The one happening now, without fanfare, without needing to be different. You are already doing it. The breath comes in. The breath goes out. Somewhere in that simple rhythm, effort and surrender are not opposites. They are two aspects of the same movement, like the in-breath and the out-breath themselves. When you sit quietly or walk slowly or simply pause in the middle of your day, you might notice that the mind still wants to grip something. It wants to know if it is doing this right. It wants confirmation. It wants progress. And that is natural. That is just the mind doing what minds do. You do not have to fight that impulse. You can notice it the way you notice a bird landing on a branch outside your window. It arrives. It will leave. The practice is not about becoming someone who never strives and never resists. It is about seeing striving when it is there, seeing resistance when it is there, feeling the texture of each one in the body. Maybe striving feels like tightness in the chest, a holding in the shoulders. Maybe resistance feels like a pulling away, a subtle clenching in the belly. You do not need to name it perfectly. You only need to feel it, to know it is happening. And in that knowing, something softens. Not because you made it soften, but because awareness itself is kind. It does not demand, it does not push. It simply sees, and in seeing, there is space. This is the gift of right effort. It teaches you that you can care deeply without touching. You can move toward what is wholesome without violence. You can turn away from what harms without hatred. The path is not about becoming hard or perfect. It is about becoming sensitive, awake, responsive. There will be days when effort feels light, almost effortless. The mind is clear, the body is easeful, the heart is open. On those days, you might think you have finally figured it out. And there will be other days when everything feels heavy, when even the simplest intention feels like dragging a stone uphill. On those days, you might think you have lost your way. But neither of these is the whole truth. They are weather. They pass. What remains underneath is your willingness to keep meeting what is here. Not with force, not with collapse, but with a kind of gentle constancy, like water moving over stone. Patient, persistent, soft. So as these words come to a close, let them fall away. Let the concepts dissolve. Come back to the body, exactly as it is. Feel the weight of it wherever you are. Feel the places where it touches the ground, the chair, the bed. Notice the temperature of the air on your skin. Notice the rise and fall of the breathing body, the belly expanding, the chest lifting, the slight pause at the top, the letting go. This is all that is asked of you, to return, to feel, to be here. The breath does not need your permission. It does not need your understanding. It simply continues, faithful and quiet, whether you are paying attention or not. And when you do pay attention, when you rest your awareness there, you are practicing right effort. You are balancing on the edge of trying and allowing. You are here. If you would like to continue sitting with these teachings, there are other reflections waiting. But there is no hurry. You can stay here as long as you need. You can return to the breath again and again. That is always enough. Let the body be soft. Let the breath move as it moves. Let this moment be exactly as it is.